puntualissimo nei nostri studi insieme alla nostra Barbara Caserta, Phil Palmer.
Hello.
Welcome.
Good evening, everybody.
Welcome, Phil, to LINEA ROCK.
Thank you very much.
So we started with the Kinks, of
We
course.
started with the Kinks when I was 12 years old. Yeah, you really got me. In fact, that's the first song we're going to play tomorrow, and I am going to sing it, which is a first.
Oh.
I don't
Non lo
usually
sapevamo
sing.
questa, la scaletta.
Okay, so we know them as artists, of course. They're one of the main bands of the British invasion of the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
But as uncles, how are they?
They're always fighting. They're brothers.
Okay.
They fought for their whole lives. I think it's normal for brothers, but they're great. I mean, they've helped me a lot. They gave me my start in the music business. I went to America with them when I was 19 and experienced some rather amazing stuff. Rock and roll turned up to 11, it was.
So, Phil, about tomorrow's event, PP50 is a celebration of your career.
It
and
is.
There's a band, there's Paola. Can you tell us more on how it is structured?
Yeah, I think we've invented a format, and it's an interview, it's a documentary, and it's a live concert all at the same time. And that's been the difficult thing, putting it together. But it's a very interesting idea, and I think it'll work. I hope it works.
But is it divided in parts, or
No.
actually there's interview song?
Yeah, it's spaced out in a way. There's an initial chat with Paola, and then we get into the songs, and we talk through my career kind of chronologically.
Did it start from your book, The Session Man? The idea actually came from that one?
It
Or-
probably did, yeah. I mean, the book has taken over my life a bit, but it's been a real passion for me. I've really enjoyed doing it, and it seems to have a life of its own, which is interesting. We started the idea during the first lockdown when I was in Rome with my wife Numa, and we were just bored, so we thought we'd start a streaming thing, which we did from home, called Casa Palmer.
Okay.
And that's where the idea came from.
How many time
Well, that's one of the problems at the moment. We're trying to make it shorter.
you don't
'cause there's-
play 500 songs?
I think we were playing about 14 songs. There's just not enough time. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a long career and 2 hours to try and fit it all in. But we're working on that, and I think it's going to be
How
great.
did you pick the songs? It was you or...
With help from the team that's been put together. Tony De Grandis has been very, very helpful, and he's kind of stage manager, and various other people that have worked together and tirelessly to put this thing together, and it's a real passion.
There's going to be surprises in the set list, the songs that maybe we don't expect?
There's no real surprises. Everything that we play tomorrow will be well known, including a lot of the Italian songs. I mean, we've concentrated on those because it's so important.
You're going to tell also a lot of stories, I guess, tomorrow, behind-the-scenes stories, which are, the things that people really enjoy the most. Is there anything in particular that you like to tell and that you wanted to anticipate to us about?
No, there are a lot of behind-the-scenes stories, but that whole idea was generated during the Casa Palmer streaming thing, when people were just interested in what was going through my mind at certain events, and that's been a very interesting feedback from the book, because I'm able to tell the story of how I felt at that moment, and then people can actually see it on YouTube.
Yeah.
So that interaction has been very interesting, and so there's references to the Nebworth Festival where Eric Clapton breaks a string and I get to play a solo in front of a lot of people.
Is it going to become also a tour in Italy and all over the world, this new concept?
Yes, it will. I think at the moment we're having the book translated by a nice company called Minimum Facts that concentrate on those sort of books, music books. And so I think that'll be ready for release sort of in the autumn. And we will generate a few more events to coincide with that.
Iggy Pop and David Bowie together, you were there. What do you remember of those sessions?
I was scared. I was a young boy. It was a very early experience for me, and the two of them together were electric. There was an energy between them which was very difficult to be in the middle of. But we had a week in Munich to record the album, and the session started at 1 a.m. every night and finished at breakfast time. for some reason, and so it was quite a strange experience for me, but we got some interesting results, I think.
You are a session man, one of the busiest one in the business, and of course those who have to know who you are know, but the people maybe sometimes, for the people, the session man is a detail, is somebody in behind the scenes, not in the spotlight.
That's right. Yeah.
Which are the pros and cons of this, and how could you explain how this is art in its own right, even if you don't write the songs, but you arrange them and you put yourself into them?
Yeah, you were kind of, as a session man, you were expected to contribute something to the music. And that was one of the difficult things about doing sessions, is you had to interpret what was going on from the artist. Sometimes a difficult concept that they had, sometimes they didn't know themselves. So you would be expected to suggest something that fits with the song that they had in the mood that they wanted. And that's an art. And I got very good at it, I must say. I was doing sessions every day, sometimes 3 different sessions in one day.
Wow.
That's how it worked in the early days.
It's like learning another language, like to understand what is, what the people expect from you, maybe from, physical movements, or do you understand? It's like psychological, in a sense, that you have to understand what the other people want from you.
Yeah. You had to interpret their abstract concepts of music. Sometimes I had people, notably, I can't remember his name, notably a guy that couldn't explain what he wanted musically, but drew me a picture of what he wanted me to play. That was quite a strange concept.
Wow. And do you actually usually know the songs before, or you go in the studio and you improvise on stuff?
In the early days, no, that didn't exist. You walked into a room and you learnt the piece of music when you got there. Scott Walker, I just remembered the name.
Okay.
Do you remember Scott Walker, the Walker Brothers?
Oh, yes.
Okay, that was him.
Lui che ha fatto il disegno. You come from the jazz.
Jazz?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't
That's
say that.
what I heard. It's not correct?
Not true,
okay.
no.
Because, usually jazz musicians are the ones that are more prepared than the others. So that's the connection was that, that maybe what you are doing is because of those origins, but if it's not,
That's not where I came from. I came from the country. Yeah, that's my influences when I was a kid, and really early rock and roll. Eddie Cochran and Buddy Holly and stuff like that.
So rock and roll was your aim since the very beginning.
I think musicians evolve into jazz musicians, not the other way around.
Okay, that's very interesting. So Spin 1-2, 1993. You've been one of the first bands doing covers on records, and you were all, amazing session men. Was it difficult to coordinate, being a lot busy? Every one of you was busy, and the list of the songs was like a democratic choice, or there was a leader?
No, there was no leader. You're right, it was very difficult to coordinate 5 very busy people and to find them all in one place at the same time, but we managed it. We had 1 week where everybody was free at the same time.
Wow.
For recording the album.
We did the album in a week, and it was a joyous process. We had a great time, and we would arrive at the studio in the morning and have a coffee and just chat for a while and then talk about music, and whatever everybody felt like playing on that day, we'd choose a Led Zeppelin song or
so you mean in that week you chose the songs and record them?
Yeah, and sometimes in one take.
Una registrazione sola.
Prima take, buona la prima, e
chi era il produttore? Who was the producer?
His name was Rupert Hine.
Rupert Hine. You play with
I did several albums with Rupert as well. I mean, that's why I chose him, because he was inventive. He was a very clever guy, and was ahead of his time, really, with the technology. So he was the perfect choice, really.
Electronic.
Yeah.
Sperimentava. Robert Hine.
So the difficulty of coordinating everybody is the reason why we didn't have any Spin 1-2-2.
That's right. And we've talked about it, all of us, ever since, really. And but to find everybody free at the
Paul
same time.
Carrack, Steve Ferrone, Tony Levin.
Yeah.
Sì.
It's difficult.
È difficile da coordinare, però ne parlano da anni di fare un capitolo 2, ma non riescono a trovarsi insieme nello stesso
Stavamo
posto.
dicendo prima, gli Hollywood Vampires
Sì.
fanno quello che loro hanno fatto nel 1993.
È
Esatto.
vero. Hollywood Vampires now are doing what you should have done
Right.
before them in the 90s already. What do you think about that band?
I don't know them, I must say.
Alice Cooper, voice.
Yes.
Duff McKagan, Guns N' Roses on bass.
Okay.
Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp on the guitar.
Johnny, it's that lot. Okay.
Matt Sorum, drums.
Yeah.
Uh,
Joe Perry.
Joe Perry
Oh,
from
right,
Aerosmith.
so it's a super
Yes.
group in a way, yeah. Okay, I'm sure they're great.
I found my way home video and all
You
the Longest
filmed
Hour.
same week?
No, we didn't do the videos in that week. I think they come a bit later. But
Chiediamogli intanto se hanno stabilito quanto durerà lo spettacolo e
sembra
si
2 ore, no?
e si daranno magari anche di più.
Lo ricordo che al Teatro Villorese in quel di Monza
Esatto.
inizia alle ore 21.
Biglietti ancora disponibili.
Disponibilità dei biglietti.
Quindi si possono anche acquistare
Ed è in teatro,
cassa, ed è
quindi
teatro. Esatto.
con l'acustica buona, eccetera.
it's a
bella
lovely little
atmosfera.
theatre, yeah, beautiful place. Yeah.
Seated,
Yeah, seated, very
seduti
comfortable,
e quindi
yeah.
belli tranquilli. So for All Along the Watchtower, did you get inspired mostly by the Hendrix version,
Yes.
but you worked also with Bob Dylan? This is a case,
that
you know.
was later, yeah. Of course, it was inspired by Jimi Hendrix, but I went to see Jimi Hendrix when I was quite young, I think 15, I think, at the Albert Hall. And I thought I couldn't really understand what he was doing. I was already an established player, you know, and I knew what I was doing. But to watch him, it's like I think he was from a different planet because he was so alien to what everybody else was doing. I mean, in the audience, Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck used to go
Wow.
and see him
Yeah.
because he was new. He was doing something very, very unique, and a good lesson to see him. But so yeah, that song is definitely inspired by Jimi Hendrix.
Certo.
Do you consider Jimmy one of your influences, or you
Later,
find
he
him,
was-
you know, you place him in another dimension?
You know, yeah, I think he's an alien. I'm sure he was, and from a different planet. Yeah.
You are a Strat user. You were in the Strat pack.
Yes.
And the Fender Stratocaster has been your companion
Ever
pretty
since
much.
I joined Eric Clapton's band,
Yeah.
and then they started giving me guitars because I was in Eric Clapton's band. But no, the Stratocaster has been part of me ever since then. So it's the late 80s, I suppose. I started using Strats, and you know, you learn to use them. They're an interesting instrument because they fit to your body. They're contoured. They're comfortable. They're not heavy. It becomes part of your body, and you have to learn how to live with that. It becomes part of you. It's a very interesting experience to
So
play
the
a Stratocaster.
Stratocaster, more than others, is more
Yeah.
versatile and actually
Well, it's not so much versatile. It just fits.
fits better.
Yeah,
It's
just-
more playable.
It's more playable and it fits into the body.
Come
The
se facesse
contours.
parte del
Sì,
suo
sì.
corpo.
It's a bit like a woman, really.
Okay.
It's got curves and contours, gentle.
Yeah.
Sorry, sounds a bit weird.
Un paragone.
But actually it makes sense.
No.
For the 50th anniversary of Fender, you were there.
I was the musical director for that show, yeah, and I volunteered to do it because there was so many possibilities to get involved in it. But there were some great people showed up, and we had a great night. I mean, David Gilmour came along with the first Strat ever made, 001,
Wow.
which is a pretty rare beast. And we just had a great night. Who else was there? Hank Marvin was there from the Shadows. I don't know if you remember him.
Gary
And
Moore.
Gary Moore was unbelievable. Joe
Walsh.
Yeah.
Joe Walsh was fabulous. I really enjoyed working with Joe, and we did some great tunes. And it's out there on video.
How many Strats you had on that stage?
Oh, there were plenty. There's probably about 15 at one point.
Wow.
Brian May came and played a Strat, which was unusual for
Yeah.
him. But it was just
I remember him with a Telecaster once, but not a Stratocaster.
Yeah,
But
it's unusual for him to play a Strat, but
Yeah.
he did, and we had just had a great night. There's the finale of that show is quite special. There's probably 9 or 10 Strats all playing at the same time.
through the years, you became more, everybody wants you. You've done a lot, so I suppose the calls are always many. But do you become more selective through the years, or actually you go for it, and when they call you, you go? And is there anything that you never did that you would like to try?
There probably is, yes. But going back to the beginning of sessions, the advice I got from a long old friend called Philip Chen, who was a bass player, he just said, say yes to everything. And I used that right through the first 10, 15 years of my playing. And then something interesting happened, because sessions would be, you would get a brief or an idea of what they were expecting from you, and someone would say, can you play like Chet Atkins, or can you do a solo like Jimi Hendrix, etc., etc. And that went on for quite a while. And then something magical happened one day, and someone asked me to play like Phil Palmer.
Oh, wow.
The point is that, then you become selective.
Okay, be yourself.
Yeah,
that was the message.
Suddenly becomes a lot easier.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, you've
really,
done, that's the moment when you realize that, okay,
we've
I've
established
done it
something.
pretty good.
We've established a reputation.
Yeah. You worked a lot in Italy. You worked with Lucio Battisti, which is one of the most international Italian stars. In the beginning, I guess you didn't know Italian language.
No, I still don't really speak.
That helped you concentrating on the atmosphere and the music more than knowing the lyrics of the song, the other songs you did?
I always made sure that I understood the content of the theme of the lyric before I started to play anything. But it was interesting because I didn't come to Italy. Italy came to London. And that was the interesting thing about the 70s. The London session circuit became so good that artists around the world started to come to London to make their album. And that's the first album that I did for Lucio was recorded in London. Yeah.
Now we're going to listen to Con il Nastro Rosa, which is one of actually the best guitar solos in an Italian song, and it's two solos in the middle of the song and at the end of it. What did you? I remember you told me last time that it was kind of improvised, that you did it like in half an hour or something like that.
Probably a couple of hours, but I had a dental appointment in the afternoon, so.
How did you get inspired for that?
I think Jeff Wesley, who was the producer of that, made such a beautiful backing track that it was very easy to interpret those chords and find the melodies that were required to make that solo. And we did three spontaneous takes of the whole song. And I said to Jeff, listen, I've got to go to the dentist. Take the bits that you want, and edit it, do what you want with it, and that was that. And I had no idea that they were going to keep it all.
Okay. And was the version already sung by Lucio, or there was no voice?
There was a vocal, yeah.
Okay, there was a vocal already.
Yeah.
You worked with Eric Clapton, tour and record, Journeyman, and the following tour.
The following tour, yeah.
There's a documentary on the man, Eric Clapton, live on 12 Bars that came out a few years ago. Did you see that? And did you recognize what you saw in that movie? Is the same man that you dealt with?
No, Eric, before I joined Eric's band, he was in a different place. He'd had some struggles with various drugs and lots of alcohol and all the rest of his life. But by the time I met Eric and joined his band, he was completely free of that stuff and was a different guy. I mean, I didn't recognize him in that documentary because it wasn't the man that I knew.
Is it a hard artist to work with, or
Eric?
Yeah.
No, he's a gentleman.
He's very human. Okay.
Beautiful man, yeah. Generous and giving. He invited me to play. He wanted me to contribute something to his band, and it was the best band in the world at the time, I must say. Steve Ferroni, Nathan East, and Greg Fillinganes. It was Ray Cooper. It was a brilliant band. I was privileged to be part of it.
Now we're going to listen to Bad Love. Do you have something to say about that song, that session? Did you contribute it to the arrangement?
And the arrangement was pretty much set, but it was a nice little band. When I arrived at the studio to record that song, it was Phil Collins on drums and Pino Palladino on bass. Mm-hmm. Alan Clark was on keyboards, and Eric was there, and we put that track together in an afternoon.
Wow.
And it's a lovely track.
So Phil, after 50 years you're celebrating of your career.
Yeah.
Don't you have like the input, the instinct of doing own music, your own record to celebrate, also these 50 years?
I think the closest I ever got to that was Spin 1 2. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine who used to work for Sony Music in Milan suggested that I do a solo album back in 1993, and I said, okay, but can I do it this way? And I wrote down on a serviette at dinner, I said, I want Tony Levin, I want Steve Ferroni, and I want Paul Carrick to be on my solo album.
Then it evolved in Swing 1 2. Yeah. Okay. Dire Straits on Every Street. Mm-hmm. How did you actually join the band? How did it happen? And do you think, that you were at the peak of your success? You were one of the biggest bands in the world, and Mark decided to put it on an hiatus, and then it never reformed. So do you think, is there any chance that it will ever happen? And did you talk with Mark recently about it?
No, Mark doesn't want to talk about reforming Dire Straits, and he never will. But we have a compromise. We have a band called Dire Straits Legacy, which is 5 of the original guys, including myself. As an experiment, really, organised by a young Italian boy called Marco Caviglia. Yeah. We did a little impromptu concert in a little stadium just outside Rome, as for fun, really. And we were really amazed that 10,000 people showed up to see it. And we suddenly thought to ourselves, Dire Straits music is timeless, and the songs of Mark Knopfler are beautiful, and they need to be replayed. So that's when we started the whole concept of Dire Straits Legacy, and we're still doing it. We're going to Brazil next week to do it again.
How did you get that gig?
How did I get the gig with Dire Straits? There was an event called the Nebworth Festival when I was still in Eric's band. Okay. And we amalgamated the 2 bands on that day. So Mark,
for a jam session?
Kind of, yeah. But it was a glorious moment, really. That's when I first started to work with Mark. That's when I first met him. And through a series of events that transpired, I found myself in Dire Straits. And signed up for 3 years of my life. Mark will never do it again, simply because he missed the intimacy of playing in front of smaller crowds. He wasn't enjoying doing the football stadiums.
I understand.
Domani sera tante di queste cose, tanta buona musica suonata direttamente dalla chitarra di Phil con degli ottimi musicisti italiani, verrà proposta al Teatro Villorese in quel di Monza. Ore 21 sarà quindi i 50 anni di questo signore, di questo session man tra i numeri 1 dei numeri 1.
Ci vediamo domani sera allora.
Yeah, come along.
Heavy Fuel is going to be in the set list?
No Heavy Fuel.
No Heavy Fuel. Okay. Bye.
Grazie. Ciao Phil.
Thank you, boys.
Ciao, grazie.
Ciao.